Like, we've been at this for a year. This is unprecedented. This is Cobourg. We don't have Canadian citizens living like refugees in Cobourg. That's not the way it works. And this is not a random circumstance. It's not because it's happening everywhere. The path that led us here was a plan by certain advocates and individuals to manipulate the circumstances to this outcome, and a fumbling of the response on the authoritative side between jurisdictional issues and levels of government that keep pointing the fingers, and we keep going around in circles.
Tamara Ugolini here in downtown Cobourg for the Community Protection and Economic Development Committee that took place this morning, September 4th, at the beautiful historic Victoria Hall that you see behind me. One particular agenda item of interest was the delegation of James Bisson, a local Cobourg resident who we have previously interviewed about his concerns with the growing encampment on the east side of town at the former Brookside Youth Detention Centre. Bisson's delegation highlights the tentative sale of this Brookside property and its expected impact on the encampment, which will either evict the residents or, if the deal falls through, allow it to proliferate. Despite homelessness being the responsibility of the upper tier government called Northumberland County, the representatives there repeatedly failed to address the situation in Cobourg and the impact that it's having on the safety and security of local residents. Bisson suggested various Town of Cobourg actions to implement a made-in-Cobourg solution, such as implementing a new tenting and encampment bylaw to manage public and private spaces more effectively. He pointed out that the existing low-barrier shelter known as Transition House, which will see an expansion of services and outreach capacities through the county's acquiring of a larger facility at 310 Division Street, will continue to create chaos on the downtown core as it's not a good service provider, failing to ensure the safety of the neighboring community, including an elementary school within a 1-block radius of the existing building, and not providing tangible, successful outcomes to those said to be receiving their services. I caught up with Bisson after his delegation, and here is what he had to say. How do you think the delegation went?
I think it generated a lot of conversation. I get the impression that the town understands.
And there's the mayor there.
Really, thank you for a great presentation.
James, please.
Thanks, James.
You bet.
So congratulations from the mayor for a great delegation. What's your takeaway?
My mom will be proud, yeah.
What's your takeaway?
I think it garnered a lot of conversation. I think that the town is in the right mindset in regards to understanding that its powers are being stymied by the province and particularly the county. I think that what's required now is a little bit of leadership and a little bit of structure to permit people like me in the private sector, churches, business groups, organizations, to be able to connect with the town to have a Cobourg solution to this encampment. I strongly believe that there's enough will left and enough community sense that we can help solve this crisis despite the stalemate that's happening at different levels of government. We just need to bypass that and get the job done.
And that multi-leveled bureaucracy and jurisdictions and getting into the muddy waters of who can do what has really resulted in residents feeling like there's a passing of the buck happening with the encampment situation, with increases to homelessness, open air drug use, community safety risks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yep. Now, how has that led you to the conclusion that there is taxation happening here without representation?
And that's really based on my experience with the county. It's become obviously clear. If you look at the videos, and I've looked at hours of these videos, the mayors of other towns that aren't being impacted by the encampment are imposing their decisions onto the population of Cobourg at their discretion without necessarily are having us the ability to be able to say, hey, if you guys do this, we're going to vote you out. We can't. So we're sending a third of our municipal taxes or property taxes over to the county, and they are basically imposing decisions that impact the very quality of life of Cobourg, and there's nothing we can do about it. Our only elected member is the mayor of Cobourg, and because of the rules and the regulations at county, once a decision is made, he's handcuffed, and now we're left to our own devices with no legislative avenue to be able to make our voices heard from a democratic process, which is a vote. We cannot vote these people out. And we are stuck with bureaucrats arming these politicians as salespeople, shoving these solutions down our throat, and there's no recourse. Yeah. We're paying for a system that we have no say in. And that's taxation without representation. We're paying taxes and we only have one seat that's limited. None of those people won an election to be at county. They were all not named there because of the fact that they're mayors and have no idea of the day-to-day situation that's happening in Cobourg. It's just not right. This isn't a democracy. Not at that level of government it isn't.
No, you guys carry on. We'll leave, but we'll be back. Okay?
Okay, sounds great. Your worship, would you like to...
Stop paying your taxes.
Your worship, would you like to ask the presenter?
And then you'll be heard.
Yeah, I think a really telling part of when there was, the dialogue between the mayor and another council member, Adam Bureau, after your delegation, was just the magnitude of the bureaucracy involved here. And that's why, or that's part of the reason why there's no real solution. And there's the analogy that Mayor Cleveland used was that they're trying to address symptoms when there's an underlying sickness. And he even went so far as to draw that sickness as being the county itself.
Mm-hmm. And that is a complex web and has a history in regards to the 1990s of downloading services from federal to provincial to towns. That's where we're at right now. What we're seeing is that the municipalities do not have the capability, the tax base, or the resources to be able to deal with this situation on a local basis. So it's higher levels of government that are simply funding solutions without outcomes. They're giving millions and millions of dollars away, and there's no accountability to the effective results of all that investment in regards to holding the providers accountable. So it's all a system of moving ships on a board without an end game. And day to day, the people of Cobourg have to live with the consequences of these political decisions from individuals, for the most part, that aren't impacted by the reality of their decisions. So we need a whole legislative solution to that. And having said that, with the speed in which government works, the only time that we're going to get action is during an election. That's where the people have to put it on the politicians' agenda, that this issue has to be addressed. And whether you're ideologically inclined, left or right, it doesn't matter. This is a systemic issue that requires people power to move the needle and get these politicians to realize we're paying, we're living through the consequences. You're supposed to represent us. You're not listening and you're doing politics when we need people solutions.
And speaking of those people solutions, because as it sounds, and we saw the frustration in some of the people who were sitting in the committee meeting there today, walking out, not feeling like they're being heard. And that's been a repeated theme, I would say, since, even the COVID era, that's just kind of ricocheted to now. But what is a solution that you're proposing outside of the government to move forward on getting out of this mess?
Yeah. So having gone through delegations and investigations and fact-finding and getting information from all sorts of sources, what's required right now in Cobourg is a channel in which the population can voice their concerns, they can be heard, and they can be guided into a positive outcome where their actions and their frustrations can actually benefit and do some good. And right now, I'm only an individual. I don't have an organization. I don't have any authority. I'm asking the town to create an environment in which the people of Cobourg can have their say, can participate in solutions, can drive all of that anger and anxiety and frustration into a solutions. We need action, because right now, that encampment is 3 times worse than it was a year ago. The powers that be have had a year to solve this problem in any way, shape, and form, and they've done nothing. If we build a parallel system, we bypass all the rules, all the regulations, all the stalemate, all the legislation. There are great organizations. So to give you an example, when the Syrian refugee crisis occurred, we had 40,000 individual refugee families come over to Canada. Our churches in this community sponsored 7 families for a year. They had 5 families assigned to each one. We're talking about reading, school, healthcare, education, language issues, housing, finances. We basically supported those people for a year. You know what the biggest problem was? Government. Government delayed and balked and gave us a hard time in regards to getting the approvals required. We raised the funds. We organized the structure. We supported those families unequivocally at no cost to the taxpayer. I believe that that kind of model and initiative on the private sector side between churches, nonprofit organizations, business entities, and individual residents, we have the capacity to be able to come together as a community, despite what the government is doing, show them how it's done, and let them follow suit and enhance what we're doing once it's proven. They keep talking about best practices. I'm going to show them what a best practice looks like.
And you'll do that
Parallel,
in a
sorry.
parallel system
Yep.
to, for instance, the service provider that has a sole source contract on these services currently in Cobourg called Transition House,
Yep.
which has, I would say, inadequately delivered any form of service to the
Agreed.
community and to those people that they're supposed to be offering outreach to. You have filed a bunch of access to information documents trying to get to the bottom of how exactly Cobourg ended up being the hub for this service delivery with this inadequate provider. What are some of the most damning or revealing aspects for you that you discovered through those access to information documents?
So I would say that that whole period of time between November 1st and January 30th, November 1st, 2023 to January 1st, 2024, the relationship between the county and its service provider, Transition House, was incestuous. I can't explain it any other way. There was so much collusion between the two entities and insiders that were looking at not just how to provide for emergency sheltering, but working in tangent with each other in regards to getting at an end result that benefited certain people within that context it was the biggest eye opener. It is blatantly obvious that there were, at least at a minimum, a conflict of interest, at worst collusion between a government entity and its provider that they supported in unequivocal circumstances. And within a 30-day time frame in particular, between the time that they identified that property at 310 on November 8th to signing cold done a deal of $2.3 million in 30 days was unheard of. We know government doesn't work that quickly. And to go from zero to a finish line in 30 days on a found property, I have information that I got through those FOI requests that indicate that the staff had no idea what was going to come after. They were dead set on getting a property for Transition House, period, at any cost, including our tax base, our livelihoods, and our community. So as far as I'm concerned, the county has not been very transparent at all. Transition House has been they push back a lot and are blaming the town of Cobourg and its residents for not embracing what they're doing because they've been doing it all wrong and behind our backs. It's that simple. And I have the documents to prove it. And I'm very conscious of libel and slander. Everything I am saying is because I've proven.
Moving forward, there will be another council meeting where some of the things that you brought forward may be put forward in a motion and resolved at a later date. Last word goes to you, James. What do you think moving forward, where this will all end up?
The only thing I'm looking for at the town level is where my private initiatives and the private sector that I'm trying to mobilize connects with the town so that we can have a common front against the province and the county's ability to be able to put terms and conditions despite our objections. So this whole presentation this morning was for the town to figure out where their responsibility ends, where they're willing to help create an environment that the private sector and the public of Cobourg can come alongside them and connect with them so that we have a common front against the entities that are creating this environment. Like, we've been at this for a year. This is unprecedented. This is Cobourg. We don't have Canadian citizens living like refugees in Cobourg. That's not the way it works. And this is not a random circumstance. It's not because it's happening everywhere. The path that led us here was a plan by certain advocates and individuals to manipulate the circumstances to this outcome, and a fumbling of the response on the authoritative side between jurisdictional issues and levels of government that keep pointing the fingers, and we keep going around in circles. We have to stop reacting to the encampment, and we have to start being in advance of what's going to happen. That's why I'm calling for a 60-day plan, because sooner or later, and you know it as well as I do, one of two things is going to happen. They're going to get evicted or they won't. And if they don't, there is nobody that's got an idea as to what comes next. Why don't we have a plan? We spend millions of dollars in salaries. These people are fully capable. They keep saying they've got all the experts on staff. And it's funny, I'm standing here with you and we see it in a different light. How can it be that just two people here that aren't the experts and being paid six-figure salaries on the Sunshine List come up with a better solution than what they've been able to do in a year? It boggles the mind.
To see more reports like this one, head on over to fixourcities.com. At that website, you can also consider supporting our work if you're able to. Check out the reports, fixourcities.com.